Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening, downloading, and subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm 12 Kyle. Check this out. On this podcast, we're going to talk about what is attractive. Not who, but what. And what I mean by that is we're not going to talk about what attracts you to your favorite supermodel. Studies have shown that there are traits, characteristics that people are generally attracted to when being attracted to someone else. And we're going to talk about it. I was doing some research and came across one site, which actually led me to another site, and it talked about the things that we're actually attracted to. So we're going to break it down and got some things jotted down here. And I'm also going to talk about, the obvious, if you will. So sit back, relax. We'll drop the theme music and we'll get the podcast jumping. Let's get it. Welcome back. As I mentioned in the intro, we're going to talk about what is attractive. Like I said, I started on some sites and I was looking for something totally different, and it actually led me down a rabbit hole and came upon this thing called the Journal of Personality and Psychology, and also another thing called Psychology Reports. And it was talking about some studies and some data and things of that nature. That kind of stuff kind of fascinates me, right? So I started reading into it and I was like, you know what, that might not be a bad idea for the podcast. Now, again, when you start talking about what is attractive, I think the physical is the obvious. And we'll talk about that a little later in the podcast. But I think there are some traits, and they talk about there are some innate traits and characteristics that people have that after I read up on it, I was kind of surprised that, some of the studies came to some of the conclusions that they did. Again, it's a general, very, very general. So we're not talking about all women, we're not talking about all men. So I will be speaking in generalities. So I'm not talking about you, boo. But yeah, it's really interesting when you think about it, because we are all attracted to, people, whether or not it be, a member of the opposite sex or a member of the same sex. We're all attracted to something and someone. And there are things that, kind of push us in that direction. So I wrote a couple of things down here. They had a long list of stuff. I won't go through all of them, but I got a few points for each one. Let's start with the men, right? Men, first thing I have here is men are generally attracted to women who are open, kind, and assertive. I would agree with that, or at least, I guess I have to speak from a personal experience. I would think so. For me, you want someone who is open, kind, and assertive. Assertive, at least for me, is very paramount, because I feel like I'm someone that is very assertive. So, naturally, I would be attracted to someone who is just as assertive, if not more assertive than me. One thing my mom used to tell me when I was a kid, she was like, a woman don't want a lazy man. And to be honest, that kind of always stuck with me. So, having three sons, that's something that, I've said to them, and I'll probably say that to them for the rest of their lives. But yeah, you got to be assertive. You got to be, a go-getter, somebody who's not going to sit back and wait for something to happen, someone who's actually going to go out there and try to make something happen. Being open, honest, and honestly, being open is something that I think most of us should do. But everybody doesn't do, to be honest, because it's not, for some, it's not easy to be open. Maybe their past has molded them and shaped them into not wanting to open up. So you have to deal with that. And as far as kindness, I mean, everybody can be kind. Everybody probably should be kind. Everybody ain't kind. Let's just keep it a buck. So yeah, that's what men are generally attracted to. Point two, men generally like women who laugh at their jokes. I would say that there's some validity to that. It's kind of weird because like I've been told that I'm funny. Maybe some of you who listen to this podcast think that I'm funny. I can get a joke off every now and then, but I'm not Chris Rock. I'm not Dave Chappelle. I'm not going to have you, in tears. But what I will say is that, I think I'm halfway funny. I'm not really, really funny, but, women tend to, I guess, what this study says is that women, men like women who laugh at their jokes. I don't know if it's necessarily an ego thing. But that's what it is. One thing I do remember, like, I remember the first time when I hung out with, my girlfriend, well, my wife now, but even before she was my girlfriend, the first time we met, and I talked about this on a previous podcast, like she laughed at damn near everything that I said. And I was like, I kind of came away from the conversation like, was I nailing it like that? Was I funny? Was I that funny? But I don't know. I mean, she could probably tell you better than I could, but yeah, I don't necessarily view myself as a funny guy, but that's just me. But yeah, according to their research, men like women who laugh at their jokes. I don't think it's an ego thing, but I would guess that it would stroke a man's ego if a woman is laughing at his jokes. Point three, men prefer women who are honest, particularly for long-term relationships. I would agree with that. I think, if you want to be in a long-term relationship, you want someone who's going to be honest. You want somebody that's going to keep it real with you. You don't want someone who is going to fake the funk and tell you lies. I think honesty is something that, a lot of men seek. Now, I will say this on some of the men that I have, how can I put this, associated myself with in this lifetime. I know men that wanted honesty from women, but really wasn't good at reciprocating the honesty back. Let's just say that, right? So yeah, it's a weird thing, but that's what it is. I mean, honestly, men, I can agree, and I can attest. I want a woman that is honest. I mean, who wants a liar? I mean, come on. Point four, men gravitate toward women wearing red. I never really thought about that, but I think red is a real dope color on women. When I saw that, I started thinking like, it's something I never really thought about because, when you look at a woman, you don't necessarily, at least me, I'm not necessarily paying that much attention to what color she has on. But yeah, red is a dope color. I think it's not my favorite color or anything like that, but I think it's a dope color on women. Now, interestingly enough, women like men who wear red too. That's very interesting. I know. And that got me to thinking, like, I think I have one red, polo shirt. And I think, yeah, that's it. I don't have any other red. Red is not a color that I wore a lot growing up. I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with gangs or anything. I just didn't really rock a lot of red. So, it is what it is. But yeah, it's that's interesting that men gravitate towards women who wear red. I think red is a real cool color on women. So, so ladies, if you're out there and you're, trying to turn a few heads, if red is your color, by all means, put it on. Point 5, Men like it when women subtly mirror their actions. For example, if he touches his hair, wait for a few minutes and then casually touch your hair. So basically you're doing the same thing that he's doing. Nonverbal communication. That's not something that I ever really thought about, but it's something I think that happens a lot when you see men and women interact. I am a people watcher, right? I like to go places, particularly in public. And if I don't have anything going on, I like to kind of, survey the scene and see what's cracking. And I like to watch people, and I like to watch to see how people interact with each other. That stuff, particularly when I'm in a public place, like let's say a mall. That is very interesting to me. It's always been kind of fun to watch just to see how people interact. And you can kind of, if you look at the nonverbal communication, you can kind of tell, or I don't want to say tell, you can assume certain things about their particular relationship based on the nonverbal communication. I'll just put it like that. So yeah, mirror the image, mirror that. And that is something that men like. Point 6, women appear even more attractive to men in groups. They call this the quote unquote cheerleader effect. Okay. So what this is, I'm going to give you a visual. You ladies, you're going to the club and y'all are 6 deep. So y'all go in and y'all walk in and y'all are 6 deep. According to this study, these, men tend to find that more attractive when you're traveling in packs, if you will. I will say this on a personal note, particularly when I was single. I ain't like that shit. I mean, because you never could really like if you wanted to talk to a woman and she was with, her 5 other girlfriends, if she's with 5 other girlfriends, I'll break it down, right? Let's say she's with 5 of her girlfriends. We at the bar, we chilling or whatever like that. Of her 5 girlfriends, probably 4 of them are real cool. And they're cool with you, and they're not bothered in the least bit by you, talking to their friend. But that 5th one, oh, she's a hater, probably a low bottom hater, but she's a hater nonetheless. So yeah, those are usually the ones that will, kind of stop your action. So fellas, just be mindful of that. But according to these studies, they say that women appear to be more attractive when they give the cheerleader effect when they're rolling deep. I think that tends to kind of dissipate as women get older. I don't necessarily know women who are 40 years old, rolling to the club or rolling to the spot, lounge, and to kick it. 6 or 7 deep. Now does it happen? I guess it does. I don't know. I don't hang out in clubs, but hey, whatever floats your boat. But when I was younger, I think I saw that more when I was in my 20s than my 30s and 40s. Moving on. The last thing I have written down here, and this one had me scratching my head. It says men are more attracted to women who are ovulating. Right. Okay, if you say so. I don't know how they came about that, but I'm gonna let that one rock. It really doesn't do much for me. Nonetheless, that's what they said. So hey, blame the psychologist. So let's turn to the ladies. I got some points written down here for the ladies as well. It says here that women typically choose better looking guys for flings and not long-term relationships. Whoa. So let me get this straight, ladies. You want to have the good looking guy for the play toy, but your man he's not as attractive. Is that how it's going down? Please enlighten me. Anybody listening to this podcast, please hit your boy up and let me know if this is true or not true. Hit me up on Twitter at 12Kyle. The number 12KYLE. That sounds strange to me, but I could actually see how it could happen. But it does sound very strange to me. I mean, you want a good looking fling, but not a long-term relationship with a good looking guy. Okay. All right. Point 2. A sense of humor is important to women. Scientists have found that it makes men seem more intelligent. So, both sides, looking for somebody who can make them laugh and, not only make them laugh, but have a good sense of humor. So I think that's important for both sides. I think the ladies will agree with that. Point 3. Women tend to prefer unselfishly concerned or devoted men who are kind and do good deeds. I could see that. I could definitely see that. I would think that because I'll just use the women that I know. Most of the women that I know are very kind and, good-hearted, if you will. And I think it would behoove a man to be closer to that and those ideals than to not be in that way. If that makes sense. So yeah, I think that's very key. You want a man who is, unselfishly concerned or devoted about others. I mean, who wouldn't want that? Especially as long as he's not neglecting you. But yeah, I think that's a very good point. Now the next point had me kind of scratching my head a little bit. Point 4. Women choose men posing in front of expensive cars or apartments versus ordinary ones, possibly because they make the men appear to be rich. I don't know about that. I think part of that bothers me because that makes it sound like you are fronting. Yeah, you're fronting. I mean, so I can't get down with anybody fronting. I mean, why would I pose in front of an expensive house or an expensive car if it's not mine, right? I mean, who does that? I mean, well, let me go back. I know who does that. Young, immature men. But nah, that's just not smart. And I'm surprised that study actually came back, because I would think that the women that they studied for this would be a lot smarter than to say something like that. That just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Now, I don't know. Maybe, it shows a ambitious attitude or whatever. I don't know. Maybe the ladies will tell me. But posing in front of a expensive car or an expensive house, let's call it what it is. Fronting. That's really what it is. It's fronting. And I would think that you would not be wanting to deal with a man who was fronting. But hey, some do. Moving on. Point 5. Men with dogs do better with the ladies. So according to these studies, women are more attracted to men with dogs. I never really thought about it like that, but there's a reason for it, because I haven't had a dog since I was in high school, right? So and I'm trying to think, when I was in college, I knew dudes who had pet snakes. Nobody had a dog in college, so that's different for me. I don't know. Even post college years, I don't know anybody that had a dog. At least not actually no, one of my partners did have a dog. But yeah, that's interesting. I never really thought about it like that, but I guess because women can be attracted to men with animals or dogs in particular because of, for one, is man's best friend. And then also there's a kinship between a man and a dog. And, it's a beautiful relationship, and women can, see that and find the goal in that, and if you will. So it's golden, if you will. So I get it. Point 6. Women are attracted to men who are mindful, present, attentive, and non-judgmental. That I will agree. I can actually see that. Being mindful, being present, those two speak to, just being able to be there and in the midst of a woman when she's there with you, that you're not, ignoring her. Attentive, very attentive. I think being attentive is paramount, in a woman's eyes for a man. So I can understand how all of these things would make a woman attracted to a man. Non-judgmental. Yeah, I definitely can see that. We all, when you get into the dating phase, when you get into relationships, when you get into marriage, everybody's got a pass. And some pass, a little more dirtier than others. And maybe I shouldn't use the word dirty. The pass is the pass, and things happen. And, sometimes we as youngsters do stuff that, as adults, you may be a little bit more embarrassed to talk about or what have you like that. But having someone there who is non-judgmental, I think, that makes a difference for a woman. So I can definitely dig that. Last point, women have rated men higher who take heroic and sometimes primal risk. These jobs include saving people's lives, hunting for food, and playing with fire. I don't know about that. Like, I was rocking with this whole list until I got to like point 7. Like, men who take heroic risk. I mean, like, and so in their studies, they have captioned here firefighter or police officer. I get it, and I understand where y'all are coming from in this, but I ain't trying to die. Like, the best, ability is availability. I mean, I can't, there's nothing I could do for my woman if I'm not here. So, I get it, and I understand how, a woman could be attracted to a man who, has a dangerous job and is a hero and, looked at like that. But hey, damn that. I'm trying to chill. I need to come home to you. I ain't trying to, I get it. I get it, but, ladies, you tell me. I mean, do y'all find that attractive? I don't know. So anyway, I tell you what, let's take a quick commercial break. And on the other side of the break, we'll talk about the obvious. We'll talk about the physical. I have some things that I jotted down just on my own personal that I wanted to talk about. So sit back, relax. We'll drop the commercial, and then on the other side, we'll talk about that. Sit tight. We'll be back in just a second. It's time for a 12 Kyle podcast throwback commercial. You're in a car with your date. What is the worst kind of music that he could play to piss you off?
The worst kind of music to piss me off. Don't judge me, but I'm gonna have to say gospel music. I know, I'm a preacher's kid in church every Sunday.
I'm
Bible
judging.
study every
I'm
Tuesday.
judging. I'm judging. So
It's true.
So you don't want to hear no Kirk Franklin or no Mary Mary or the Georgia Mass Choir.
If you're playing gospel music, it better be some I love God. You don't love God, play me some gospel trap music, please.
Oh, that's funny.
Like I love God. The LUA is not even love.
Right. Oh man, I'm you surprised me because I knew you were gonna say something else. Wow, that's funny. And just like that, we are back Once again, it's your boy 12 Kyle, the 12 Kyle podcast. We're talking about what is attractive. As I mentioned before the break, I wanted to come back and talk about the obvious, because in the research that they provided from, the information that they collected, they talked about characteristics, they talked about traits, they talked about trends, but they didn't get into the obvious. So as I was reading and, kind of making mental notes, once I decided to do a podcast on this, I started jotting some things down, and I have my own little thing as far as the obvious, a couple of things that I want to talk about. And obviously some of them are personal, but we'll get into that in just a second. So the first thing that I wrote down is race. I understand that there are a lot of people who are attracted to people outside of their race. It's natural to be attracted to people inside your race, but outside of your race, some people are, and I am perfectly fine with that, right? Because I think at the end of the day, who you like is who you like. Who you love is who you love, and that's all that matters. And I could care less what somebody does behind closed doors, whether it be whether or not it's a man liking and loving another man, or a woman liking and loving another woman, black man, white woman, black man, whatever the case may be. I don't care, right? But there's a caveat to that. There's two caveats. Personally, I don't find white women attractive. I think I said that before in this podcast. If not, I'll say it again. I don't find white women attractive. And that's cool with me, because if I was talking to a white woman and she said, I don't find black men attractive, I don't find you attractive, hey, that's cool. It's all good, all love, right? And so, like, growing up, before I got married, like, I never dated, never dated any white girls or anything like that. So that's just not how I kicked it. Because again, I'm cool with them. Everything's love, but I'm just not attracted to you. Right. So fast forward. The other caveat is the only issue that I've ever had with people when it comes to race and what they're attracted to is that if you said, let's say, as a black man, I'm only attracted to white women. Now that I have a problem with. The reason being is because now, again, you're allowed to be attracted to who you're attracted to. But if you say you're only attracted to white women, that just doesn't ride with me. I would probably ask more questions. Or if you say if you take it even a step further and you say, well, I will only date white women. Or you say I only date, like let's say if you're white and you say I only date black women. Okay, why? I wouldn't want to know why. Like I would definitely be open to a conversation about that. But again, I'm not going to, throw you down a flight of stairs for it. But yeah, I would want to know. But yeah, race. Again, I don't have any problem with anybody dating outside of their race. Whatever floats your boat. Like who likes you, love who loves you. But if you say that I will date, I'm attracted to this and not this over here, then I kind of want to know why. Still not gonna throw you down a flight of stairs, but I'm gonna ask more questions. You know what I'm saying? The next thing I wrote down here, color. And I know you're probably thinking, okay, well, you just talked about race and black and white, so what are you talking about color? Obviously, it goes without saying, it's something that I heard on a podcast, Back Talk podcast a couple of weeks ago. Shout out to Back Talk Media. Dope podcast. Check them out if you get a chance. They're really, really dope. But they were talking about light skin and dark skin a couple of weeks ago on their podcast, and young lady who was co-hosting, they brought in a guest, and she said that men would often tell her, or you look good for a dark skinned girl, which to me, and I've heard that before, but that sounds so crazy. Like, so colorism, I think, particularly in the black community, is something that, you know, is really not talked about as much as it probably should be. And there are deep underlying issues that, to be honest, I could talk about on another podcast forever about that. But yeah, when you have that and you say, okay, well, I don't talk to dark skinned girls. I don't talk to light skinned girls. Like, for me, and for those of you who've never seen me, I'm dark skinned. Like, I'm chocolate, like really chocolate. And sexy chocolate, by the way, but chocolate nonetheless. That's what my mom says. But nah, I just like, I never got into that line of thinking as far as the colorism. And the reason being is because, like, I just wasn't raised like that. So, like, I was just taught, like, you see a black woman, it's a black woman. So I've dated, if you want to talk about shades, I've dated women very light. I've dated women darker than me. My wife is light skinned, but it wasn't like I said, oh, I'm gonna get me a red bone. It wasn't like that. It's just, I met her and we clicked, and, you know, it went from there. But yeah, colorism, I'm not on that. I think you miss out when you do that. Now, again, I understand, you know, to some degree, if you have a preference, but saying, okay, well, I don't want to talk to light skinned guys is not the same as saying I don't want to talk to a guy that's 5'2". Right? I don't want to go on a date with a guy that's 5'2" and I'm 5'11". You know, so I get that. But yeah, that has always been really, really interesting to me. And it's even more interesting now that I have sons who are dating. And it's funny because, like, if you look at our family on a color in a color scheme, my two oldest sons are very brown, and my youngest son is dark skinned just like me. And he is like, you know, but I was telling all three of them, like, you don't worry about, you don't get into that, you know, like, you appreciate the black woman for who she is, or the black girl, if you will, for who she is and how she looks and what she does in the whole nine. And then our daughter she's brown. She's a very light brown. So, you know, it's, you know, the way that it was explained to me, particularly at a young age, was, you know, at the end of the day, the world sees black, right? So you can get on this light versus dark all you want, but I've never heard a white person say, yo, he's light skinned. I've never heard that. I've never heard that. They don't see, and not just white people, but the whole world, they don't view us that way. So, I've never been on that. I don't understand that line of thinking, because, and even going back to the podcast, what they were saying was, for me, I don't understand the saying of, well, she's cute for a dark skinned girl. Why can't she just be a beautiful black woman? And it's that separating of the culture, and I don't understand why it is. And again, that's a whole nother subject for a whole nother day. But it's interesting to me because, like, I never got that. Like, nobody never said, well, yo, you cute for a dark skinned guy. like I've never heard that before in my life. And, you know, but I was very, probably since the age of 8, very, very comfortable in my hue, if you will. So, I never lacked for confidence when it came to girls. So like, I didn't like, and, you know, people joke, and before I move on to the next subject, people joke, and then, you know, they say, well, light skin was in the 80s and the 90s, dark skin came in. I mean, have I heard the jokes? Of course. And they're funny. And, you know, the whole New Jack City, when Nino Brown stabs Christopher Williams in the hand, you know, the whole, you know, that was the moment that the dark skinned brothers was back in, you know, whatever. I'll say this, at the end of the day, we're black. So the world doesn't view us any other way. we can get on this BS about separating as far as colors, but it's not about that. It's really about, having a situation where you enjoy and thrive in the skin and the hue that you're in and love yourself for what you are and how you look. But yeah, obviously some people are attracted to, different shades. Personally, for me, if you're black, you all right with me. And I'm gonna be, when I was single, I would be attracted to every shade on the spectrum. But I digress. The next attribute, eyes. Eyes, I think, are very important. I think when you're talking about, aspects that, that will draw people in and attract people, I think people really, really sleep on the eyes. I think, a nice pair of eyes, whether or not they be hidden by glasses or contacts, real contacts, not the fakes. I think eyes are very important because, that's one of the first, at least for me, I think that's one of the first things that you should see, the eyes. Now, of course, the body, well, we'll get into body in just a second, but, the eyes are dope. I mean, like, if you have nice eyes, and I'm just speaking from a male's perspective, if a woman has nice eyes, I think that gets her a leg up on the competition, if you will. Smile. That's the next thing I wrote down. I think men and women go a long way with a nice smile. People who have nice smiles tend to smile more. I think most people want to see somebody that is smiling. And I think that's what, attracts people when you are not afraid to show those pearly whites. But, I think it's important. And I think, a nice smile can go a long way. And I think that's something that will attract people. The next thing I wrote down is hair. And I can't speak for white women. I can't speak for Asian. I can't speak for Latina women. I'm just talking to the black women right now. Hair, I think both for men and women in the black community go a long way. Some people put a little bit more emphasis on hair than others. My only prerequisite for hair for as long as I've been living is that your hair is done. I mean, like, you can't come outside with a busted wig. If your wig is not, and what I mean by wig, that's old school 80s term for head. For those of you who might not know. So yeah, you can't come outside, with your hair looking any old kind of way. So you gotta, even if you're having a bad hair day, put the hair in a bun, ponytail, put a baseball cap on, and come outside and chill. And the same goes for guys. I know, like, there's this phenomenon, particularly of the younger generation, who, they just do. I mean, like, I don't even know what to call it. Like, I know they call it the Duke starting five, like, where you just have just a nappy head. See, and which is such an oxymoron for somebody like me who came up in the 80s, where you couldn't have a nappy head. Like, it would never be cool for you to have an afro and it be nappy. I mean, not that afros were in the 80s, but you get my point. You can never have a nappy head. Like, it would never be cool for you to have a nappy head. But 2018, it's a different story. I mean, again, this is pretty popular with the younger generation. If you're over 30, you probably should not be walking around with your head looking like that. So yeah. And then, of course, there's the last thing. Last but not least, the body. Bodies, body types, body shapes, body parts. That's the physical part that I think, a lot of people can tend to get hung up on, if you will. But if we're going to keep it a buck, I mean, if it's something that you're attracted to, normally that's one of the first things that you see. Like, I can't see your eyes from across the street. I can't see your smile from across the street. But if you got a body, trust me, I can see it from across the street. But and it goes for women and men. I think, a lot has been made about it. I think you have to, it really just depends on where you lie, right? Some people, they're into the enhanced body parts and others, don't even kick it like that. So it just depends. I would say this much. I think, whether or not you work on the body or you paid for the body, it's yours. Take care of it. And then also understand too that, all of that stuff, comes with a lot with it. So I understand why people are attracted to, bodies and stuff, but understand this: as you get older, I don't care how many booty shots you've had. I don't care how many breast enhancement you've had. None of us will be the same size or same body type and shape at 25 than we are at 55. And if you plan to live to 55 or live beyond 55, you have to understand that. So, the physical, the cool thing about the physical is that it's there and it can bring people in. But at the end of the day, physically, as we get older, we, for lack of a better term, deteriorate. So if you try to be with somebody long term, that's what you have to look forward to. And it's really about, what attracts you. The physical obviously is something that can stand out and jump off the page. But if you don't have some of the other attributes that I mentioned earlier in the podcast, then, not only will you not be happy sometimes with who you are, but you might have a hard time attracting other people. It just depends. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for checking out the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm your boy 12 Kyle. We'll catch you guys next time. 5 G's.